Welcome everyone to our very first Lunch and Learn program. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to learn more about the River Bluff Nursing Home Referendum. Whether you vote early or vote on Tuesday, June 28th, our hope is that you find this experience both educational and informative. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat box. The agenda for our program will be introductions, a bit of history about River Bluff Nursing Home, a reading of the referendum, our guest perspectives, Q&A session, and our closing. My name is Paula Lind. I've worked in government for the past 34 years. I've been a league member since 1994. And I've also been a member of the local government committee since 1997. Claire McIntyre, our league president, is with us, as well as Winnebago County Board member Angie Gorel. It is my pleasure to moderate this session. And with that, I would like to introduce our guest panelists, who both serve on the Winnebago County Board. A Winnebago County Board member is elected. As a legislative body, the board enacts ordinances and resolutions. As an executive body, the board administers the activities of the county departments, except those headed by other elected county officials. As a governing body, the board is responsible for adopting an annual budget for the county, establishes its tax rate, and authorizes voter-approved bonds. The board also reviews zoning, planning, and land use matters, and certain permits and licenses. The board may establish and appoint to special districts. It is my pleasure to introduce Jean Crosby, Winnebago County Board member, District 16, and Jaime Salgado, Winnebago County Board member, District 12. At this time, our guests will be given 2 minutes to tell us about themselves and the good work they contribute to our community. And we'll start with Jean.
I knew that. Jean Crosby. I've been a member of the Winnebago County Board since 2016. So I am in my second term, which is a 2-year term. I enjoy the work. I enjoy being a part of the solutions and solving problems. I also am active with the Rockford Chamber of Commerce as incoming chair, and I also serve on the board of directors for the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. I do own and operate a business, and I'm in real estate, and I enjoy that as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to you, Paula.
Thanks, Jean. And now we will listen to Jaime.
Thank you very much, Paula, for having us today. Been a county board member for District 12, and I've been on the board as well as coming up on, actually, this is my second term. I serve on the finance committee as the finance chair, overseeing the budget processes, anything with the accounting aspect of it and the finances for the county as a whole. My background, just to give you a little information, I also, my background is accounting finance, double major, MBA management. I work for Collins Aerospace on my time and on my private side. So I do have a lot of experience when it comes to accounting finance perspective. So that's why, it was the confidence of, joint caucuses to put me as the chair for the finance. So I take that into consideration, leading Ted Biondo with a history of good things to come from that perspective. So I also serve on the operations administration committee as well. There's a lot of things that we're doing that are very creative. Capital project right now, we have the art funds that we're trying to decide what we should do with those funds. particularly to serve, our community, our citizens, because it is citizens' money. So I do appreciate on this topic of River Bluff to kind of give a little brief information and the importance of that facility and what the future may hold for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. So at this time, I'm going to do just a little history of River Bluff. In 1853, Winnebago County purchased a farm on the bluffs of the Rock River and started the Winnebago County Poor Farm. During the years that follow, it became a working farm for people who were not able to support themselves and for those deemed insane. When residents died, the county placed a potter's field cemetery on the property to bury them. 600 men, women, and children who lived there were buried between 1853 and 1954. Over the years that followed, nursing services were added along with other hospital services, and in 1953, the facility was named the Rockford Township Hospital and Nursing Home. Then, in 1956, the facility was renamed the River Bluff Nursing Home. In 1967, Winnebago County built on 22 acres a 140,000 square feet building that houses the current River Bluff Nursing Home. Today, River Bluff services include physical, occupational, speech, and respiratory therapy, short-term rehabilitation, post-hospital, long-term nursing skill, Alzheimer's and dementia care, hospice and palliative care, and wound, pain, medication, nutrition, disease management, and education. The one constant factor from the poorhouse to the current River Bluff Nursing Home is the long history of caring for people in need. Over the years, the name, location, and buildings have changed, but it's continued to serve those in need. And as posted on their website, their mission is to provide exceptional short and long-term care to the community through personalized individual care. Now, before we get to the guest perspectives, I will do a little reading on how the referendum reads on the ballot. But first, on June 28th, 2022 primary ballot, there will be an important countywide referendum about the Winnebago County owned and operated River Bluff Nursing Home. The advisory referendum asks the voters if they approve of an increase in the property tax levy for River Bluff Nursing Home. When the taxpayer is faced with making decisions regarding property taxes, it's important to not only understand the cost, but also know the value to the public of the specific unit of government that will be using the money. For some, especially younger voters, it may be news to them that Winnebago County owns and operates a nursing home, and perhaps probable that most voters are not aware of how River Bluff has served Winnebago County for the last 150 years. The advisory question of increasing the tax levied by the County of Winnebago for the specific purpose of maintaining River Bluff Nursing Home reads as follows. Shall the County of Winnebago, Illinois, continue to own and operate a short-term rehabilitative, long-term skilled nursing facility for the residents of all incomes by increasing the amount levied by the county from 0.0445% to 0.1% for the specific purpose of maintaining the River Bluff nursing home. And then in parentheses, that is the property tax rate increase on a $150,000 home would approximately result in a $25 annual increase on your tax bill. You will vote yes or no. That being said, the history, the reading of the referendum, I would like now to have our guests present their facts and perspectives on the River Bluff referendum. And each one of you can have up to 5 to 6 minutes. And this time we're going to start with Jaime.
Well, thank you very much on that. It's very important. Just matter of fact, this came through finance and the referendum. And I do appreciate Mr. Butita as the person that sponsored this, putting it on the ballot. I think it's very critical to look at, since it's been 33 years since we last increased the tax levy on this. Now, as we know, with inflation and everything going up, keeping the expenditures equal to the revenues is obviously something critical. And over 33 years, we have not tax levied that increase. So it's been over 33 years, just for a fun fact there for everybody's information. So we are asking to increase 0.05%, which is equivalent to $25 based on a $150,000 home assessed on that property. And so what we are asking, it's about a $2 a month increase that you would see. It's $25 annually on that perspective. So what does that do? Obviously, it brings us up to about 2 to 2.5 increase in revenues for River Bluff, which is what we're right now deficit wise spending. So it kind of brings it to a level on that perspective. Now there's Mr. Butita and the auditors have come back and alluded to that we've spent our general funds by $9.4 million over a time, over the time of it. And we've absorbed some of our reserve funds on the River Bluff. Primarily, it has to do with the management, the staffing out there, and sort of issues that we have. But as time has gone on, we changed some internal policies allowing outside residents out of Winnebago County to come here and use the services as well. One of the biggest things from this perspective, why River Bluff is why it's important to have a facility out there, is that we do take Medicaid, Medicare individuals. Whether privately owned, it's really difficult for those individuals from that perspective to provide those services, right, to the community, especially for low income, those individuals. On average, I've heard that it costs about $6,300 a month for a family to obviously sustain these services for a nursing home. So it's very expensive. It's something that is very critical. And with being tax subsidy for that, we can provide those services for those individuals that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to go to a private institution. So it's a pillar for us. It's a service that's being provided. It's a non-for-profit. We're not here for obviously making profit. It would be nice if we could and maintain that expenditures and a balanced budget, as we would call it. So we know there are critical issues out there with River Bluff on the operational side. We are working on that perspective, but I believe that this property tax levy increase would come a long way to get us to a point where we're moving in the right direction and maintaining it at this balanced budget from that perspective. Looking historically, we recognize the importance that it's caused that $9.4 million over the lifetime here recently for the general funds that we've absorbed on that. So from a business standpoint, yes, it makes sense, to look at other ways to cut, to potentially sell it, to do different things, outsource it, whatever the case may be. But from my perspective, it is part of the community that is providing that Medicaid, Medicare purpose for us that private entities wouldn't be able to provide. So I think that's why it's very critical for a community, just like our sheriff's department, just like the courts, everything like that. There's services that are needed for a community. that are tax subsidy for that aspect of it. And I do think that's why it's very critical, and that they should take that into consideration. I understand that property taxes is always a huge concern for individuals. My property taxes are so much, they're going up, it's continuing to go up. I don't want to pay one more dime on that perspective. We are not a home rule based where we could implement some utility tax of some sort, like the city of Rockford or some other municipalities. Our only structure and power that we currently have is obviously the tax levy piece of it, right, from that perspective. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully we make as constructive decisions that benefit the whole community. And I have a pleasure. I think it's a great thing to put it on the ballot, and just to see what the consensus is, and moving forward, what direction that the county board members can make that decision for the community and the citizens of Winnebago. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaime. Now we will move to Jean Crosby.
Thank you very much, Paula. There's two sides to this debate. One is the human side, and the other side is the fiscal side. So in order to give you some background and a benchmark to work from, I'm going to present pretty much just facts so that you can weigh those facts and make your own decision. It really doesn't matter what I think. That really matters is what you think. So because there's a human side and a fiscal side, this has been, it's a very difficult decision. And what we're asking for is advice. It's an advisory question. We want to hear what the community has to say so we can take the lead from our citizens and not sit in judgment over anything else. So it's very, very important to the county board members that you do vote and that you do make sure your voice is heard, because we're asking for your advice and for your input on this very, very, very difficult and serious decision. One of the problems we've had, and Jaime was kind enough to bring it up, is that since Jaime and I have come on the board, it has cost the county over $9 million to sustain River Bluff. And when we have to take money from other entities to support River Bluff, it harms the entity. So if we have to take something out of the sheriff's budget or capital improvements to make sure that River Bluff stays whole, somebody else is going to feel that impact. And it's not just the department or the entity, it's our citizens. So that's why we want you to give us the advice of where you would like to see this go. In order for a nursing home or this kind of retirement facility to be fully funded, it needs to have a minimum of 75% occupancy. And I figured that's not a bad number to reach for. It doesn't seem to be prohibitive, and it doesn't have to have a full house. Our dilemma is we don't have enough revenue in the budget to pay the prevailing wage to nurses and LPNs and everybody else that comes forward and works at River Bluff. So we are constantly being poached, and our employee retention is very, very low because we can't compete in the marketplace. That is why we're asking you to tell us if it's worth your interest and the community's interest to do a raise in tax levy. The other side to this is when we receive the ARP funds, and ARP funds are federal dollars that have come into the community as a result of COVID. And it has been our savior in many, many ways, because now we can do capital improvements. We can increase other people's budgets. And it's been absolutely a home run. But that's a one-time shot. And in order to sustain River Bluff and not have to take away from other divisions and other entities, it's going to take a tax increase. Now, I did tell you in my introduction, I am in real estate. And as a result of that, I deal with consumers on our tax issues constantly. And we do have extremely high taxes in Winnebago County. Jaime is correct again. We are non-home rule. We cannot impose any other taxes. And so the only way we can get that revenue is to ask you for it. And if we can increase that revenue at your discretion, then that's what we're looking for. But at the same time, we are very prohibitive when it comes to our property taxes. Many homeowners have a higher payment per month in their property taxes than they do in their mortgage. So this is a real bread and butter issue, and it sits in every household every day. Now, again, Jaime was kind enough to say there's 140,000 square feet in River Bluff. Heating River Bluff, electric for River Bluff, all those factors come in here. And as I said before, we cannot support as a county for infinitum because we just don't have the revenue. So with that, and we do, as I said, it's a bread and butter issue. And for somebody from the public to pay full boat at River Bluff comes out to be about $75,000 a year. So at $75,000 a year, not many people can afford to pay that. So it does provide a critical component to our community. But the whole reason, as I said, that it's on the ballot, it's because it's your choice. We don't want to stand in judgment of that. We just want your input and if you're willing to accept a tax increase or if you're not. But I'm very happy that the League of Women Voters has decided to do this. I think it can be very informative and it certainly enables you to make the best decision for you and your family. So thank you again, Paula.
Oh, thank you, Jean. Now, what we are going to move to is our question and answer period. When the registrants who joined our Zoom today registered, they had an option to place a question that they would like answered. And I believe the first one was, please explain the referendum. I think we've done that very nicely. Our second question, explain in detail what the referendum will entail. I think we've done that as well. I think we very nicely have answered the third question. What are the pros and cons of this referendum? A question, the fourth question that was sent, and what happens if the referendum does not pass? So I'm going to allow each of you 2 minutes to address that or your perspective on it. And Jean, I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Number one, the referendum is advisory. So if it does not pass, the county board may make the decision to do nothing. That's one choice the county board has. Another choice the county board has is to start developing a budgetary restraints for River Bluff so we can live within the budget. And as Jaime alluded, they are working on that. Now, every nursing home has a 1 through 5 star rating. And you have to remember, River Bluff provides the same services as Van Meter. They're both long and short-term facilities. And we need to, I forget where I was going with that, so I'll maybe back up a bit here. But if the board could decide to close River Bluff, that could be a decision as well. That's why we need your input. And to close River Bluff would save the county millions and millions of dollars. And we wouldn't have to take from Peter to pay Paul, which is what we're doing today. And as a savings of that, we could beef up our public safety. We could beef up our capital improvements. So those are our three choices. You know, do nothing, tighten up the budget to live within our means and maybe take fewer patients, or simply close it.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. Before I move on to Jaime, I just wanted to take note that we call it a River Bluff nursing home referendum, but actually it is an advisory referendum. So it's not a pass or fail. This is information from the voters to you
Correct.
on a potential direction as the county board as a whole makes their decision on how they're going to move forward. So I just wanted to add that in. And now, again, what happens if the referendum doesn't pass? I'll move to Jaime.
Sure. And once again, as Jean alluded to, this is we're going to take that information, that feedback. It's advisory. Doesn't mean that we're going to completely, close it, do anything, outsource it, whatever the case may be, tighten the grip. Right now, we're trying to figure out essentially, ideally right now, the number one issue is increasing that tax levy to get it to a point where actually being balanced, a balanced budget from that perspective, because it is going to generate $2 to $2.5 million a year for River Bluff. So that's the critical piece, right? Get that to square one. If that doesn't happen, then we have to obviously take dramatic decisions on, hey, we've already $9.4 million, give or take, eaten into our reserves. What other options do we have? What can we do with the facility? Do we have any alternative on that decision? So the county board is going to have to take those tough questions. What can we do? Do we outsource it? Do we close it? Do we, reshape the model, on the the payer mix that we currently have between Medicare, Medicaid, and privately, patients that come through. So those are very critical decisions that we have to, but once again, it's an advisory. I'm assuming that's the feedback that's going to come back to the finance committee and kind of make that determination. What direction do we want to go in? Obviously, we have to have a benchmark that we have to look at to see whether we're going to make. It's not about, sometimes it's not about having, we have a capacity of about 308 beds. Sometimes it costs us more money to have 308 versus having the correct payer mix. So we have to look strategically, what makes best sense for the nursing home out there, with the quality and covering its expenses. So those are the things, but critically right now is the decision, does it get us to a point where we're going to be at a critical moment where we're balancing the budget? Yes or no for River Bluff. If that doesn't happen, then decisions are going to have to be made, one way or the other, cutting back, tighten the belt on certain things at River Bluff, or, start looking at alternative options for River Bluff from that perspective. But I just want to advise, because I hear this across the board. I just had a River Bluff meeting last night with Miss Angie Goro chairs that. And I've been hearing, there was 12 people that canceled their subscription because they're waiting until the referendum to come through to see what direction, because they feel they might close, whatever direction, right? So there is that fear factor on that perspective. But I just want everybody to understand this is an advisory. This is not, it's a one-shop deal. If it's no, then obviously it's going to shut down, whatever the case. I just want to be clear that that's not the direction right now we're heading in. It gives us feedback what citizens are thinking about that. So I just want to be clear, because I was at a meeting yesterday where 12 individuals decided not to go into River Bluff because based on, waiting for this referendum, whether it was going to go through or not go through. So I just want to be critical that this is just an advisory and we're trying to figure that possibility of what direction we need to move in.
Very good. Very good. I have a question in the chat, and one of the questions is, it would be helpful to know how other county entities are suffering from moving, not moved, here, hold on just a minute, from moving the 9 million to River Bluff. Jaime, do you want to go first and then we'll go to Jean?
Sure. So I just want to be clear on this. So there are two funds. There's the general funds, which allocates everything outside of the sheriff's public safety sales tax that they have. So that's one piece of it. So it does impact. Eating up our reserves obviously means that, obviously it's drawing down our reserves, which impacts our rating when it comes to credit rating, getting the best interest rates for that. So if we don't maintain a 25% in reserves, which is a 3-month give or take payroll, HR payroll for all employees, 3 months. If we don't maintain that, obviously continuously eats down and gets us below that 25% threshold, right? Which causes a lot of strain on the county from a cash flow perspective, to obviously our credit rating, which impacts, whether we get financing or not. So it does impact on that aspect as a whole. Each department has its own budget from that perspective. So from my perspective, everyone has been doing a great job managing their department budgets as a whole. Now, as we get into this 25% reserve, and it's eating the River Bluff is eating into that fund reserve, it's going to drop it down to 25%, whatever the case may be, then yes, additional cuts need to be made across the board to absorb that decline. So we're not at that violation of that policy that we currently have. So in a nutshell, it does impact other departments as a whole. But primarily it's just our fund reserve that we have, which is the 3-month period of the 3-month payroll that we must keep in place for our vitality and for our credit rating and our bond rating for that aspect for our interest rates. Obviously, if we are below that, the greater the better, because we get better interest rates, better rating, financing is better for us in a whole. So it does impact as a whole, other departments. When we go to do the budget, if we're below that or at a level that we need to absorb some of those cuts, then absolutely, then it goes across the board, that some other departments will need to make those cuts and absorb those.
Thank you, Jaime. Jean,
Could you do me a favor and repeat?
read that. Okay, sure. From the chat box, one of the registrants, it would be helpful to know how other county entities are suffering from moving the 9 million to River Bluff.
Well, here's the long and short of it. Other counties are not financially tied to our county budget. So we stand or fail on our own. That's number one. Number two, there's very, very few counties that have a nursing home. We're one of the few. Now, having said that, our nursing home or River Bluff facility has been with us over 150 years, and it's been a staple in our community, and it's been there for our citizens to rely on. And nobody in recent history that I am aware of has looked at the financials of it and has been willing to ask you, the voter, what you prefer. So it's not a common practice to have a county-owned nursing home. There's very, very few of them in the state of Illinois and probably across the country. Most of these entities are private, and the government does not participate in their support or their success or failure. So we are kind of an anomaly out here because we have offered that for literally decades, and it's really become a part of our staple within Winnebago County. And that's why it's important that you give us your input so we know loud and clear what your preferences are.
Great. Can either one of you share with us what is the occupancy of River Bluff Nursing Home?
I think we're about at 50%. Is that right, Jaime?
Yeah, that's about right. Right now we're about 140.
140.
That's out of 308.
Okay.
So it's less than that piece of it. So my understanding is our capacity is 308. 140 is where we're at. Just a couple things, before COVID, it was different with the whole COVID thing. It decreased dramatically. There's got to be a patient to nurse ratio as well that we have to maintain. There's compliance that we have to. So right now, we have the capacity right now to go up to 200 is what I heard, is that's our target where we want to be at, is about 200 beds. That's what I've heard from the meeting that we had yesterday. It's about, right now they have 140 residents out there at River Bluff, but with the capacity, with the staffing levels currently that they have, they can go up to 200. They are continually looking to hire individuals out there to provide those services out there. But yeah, right now we have the capacity to go up to 200
Thank you.
beds. Yep.
Thank you.
Paula, can I add one more thing here?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Unknown to many, which I didn't know either, so you're not alone. The state of Illinois has a tax per bed that we have to pay the state. And so every one of our beds we pay for as a community. So that adds another factor into the affordability of keeping a county supported nursing home.
So with that, here, I have a question. Will the funds our governor just announced for Medicare facilities assist River Bluff Nursing Home? I'll start with Jean.
I'm not as familiar with it as I'd like to be, but it will help the individual that's covered by Medicare, which in turn would apply for being admitted to a facility that supports that. So it will not hurt anybody. It's a good thing. And I just hope people understand it well enough to embrace it.
Very good. Thank you. Jaime?
Yeah, it's just a similar thing. I have to do a little bit more research on it, but my understanding, it will be a benefit to us from that perspective. But just keep in mind with Medicare, there's a certain amount of time frame that is covered under Medicare. So that's one perspective that we have to be cautious about and kind of look at what the impact will be of this $700 million that Governor Pritzker just signed to see what that impact is going to be for the nursing homes out there. So just keep that in mind with Medicare. There is a number of days that is covered. After that, I mean, it just and it's mostly for rehabilitation perspective from that matter. Medicaid is a whole different perspective. So just wanted to make the distinction between that, and hopefully we can crunch the numbers and see what that impact would be for our River Bluff nursing home. Okay,
I'm getting quite a few really good questions in the chat, so we're going to try to get through these. Here is one in the chat box. If the referendum levy passes, will the funds generated allow for increases in wages to attract qualified personnel? Jaime.
Sure, I'll start with this. This is a very good question. At this point in time, we are looking at the critical piece right now is to get to that balanced budget, right? That's the critical piece. Obviously, we'll have to look at our peer mix, filling up those beds, what we think it's going to be. I can't answer that question because I'm not on the day-to-day operations and the strategic planning, what we're going to do to our goals and objectives to get us to that number and what that payer mix is. But ultimately, yes, I mean, we want to get to a level where we are collecting, but also attracting the best quality employees out there, and obviously give them and have them be paid what the market levels are based on other hospitals, nursing homes across the nation. We see this across the board with our sheriff's department as well, where individuals, leave to other counties because they're paid more, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, that is something that is in our back of our minds, and trying to attract and retain nurses, CNAs, and dietitians, and et cetera, at River Bluff. It is part of the strategy. It is part of the formula that we're trying to allude to. I can't guarantee that it's going to be quick and efficient. I know that we recently passed an ordinance to increase the CNA and those individuals, the pay actually increase. So we are starting to do that. However, once again, the biggest thing is trying to get the qualified individuals, retain the nurses, the CNAs, but also, you know, with this, hopefully this referendum advisory, and we take it, it passes, yes, and you know, we run with it, then potentially, you know, we could start looking at a different formula that attracts both a payer mix, the best payer mix strategy, objectives, and goals for River Bluff, but also then looks at the employee side where we're actually competing against other nursing homes, nurses, CNAs, whatever the case may be, personnel.
Thanks, Jaime. Jean?
Well, Jaime's right again. I'll give him all of that. Our biggest problem isn't so much hiring. The biggest problem we have is retention. Causing them, being able to give them the benefits and the living wage where they can really have the lifestyle they're looking for and be supportive of the nursing home. We compete constantly with private entities that are able to pay higher wages and offer better benefits. And they do indeed poach our people. We get new LPNs, new nurses. They get their training at River Bluff and then they move on to something else because of a higher wage. So hopefully, if this does pass, then we can absolutely address that. Without it, it's going to be very difficult because the county cannot support millions of dollars in loss year after year after year. So it's going to be it's critical to us that you guys vote.
Thank you. Do either know the length of time on a waiting list right now? No, it's okay.
No.
We'll move to this next question. Are the Winnebago County Board members working with Stevenson County Board members in terms of advice since they are dealing with a similar situation with Walnut Acres?
I have not interfaced with any Stevenson County Board members. I think my position is, and many board members' position is, it's not up to me, it's up to you. I would rather have your influence than anybody else's. Your influence is what I'm looking for, and I hope you will provide it so that we can take that forward.
Very good. Jaime?
Yeah, from my perspective, I have not had any communication directly with Stevenson County. I am aware that they are voting on the Walnut Acres to, you know, sell it, get rid of it essentially to a private entity. I am aware of that. Once again, I know that our administration has been working with River Bluff administration out there to find what's the common theme across our Illinois counties across the board. What are we seeing? So there is been research being done on their perspective, looking, and we're not the only entity out there that is seeing. Private institutions are seeing issues as well with nursing homes. Same with counties. It's not a one thing isolated incidents with our Winnebago County, and absolutely, you know, we're taking the feedback from the citizens as well, because it is their taxpayer money that it's going to pay for these services, and so we need that information. But to be honest with you, I have not had communication with Stevenson County, and it's a different population and citizens out there that, you know, might experience different things, and hopefully, you know, it could be a benefit. I know some of the things that, you know, those individuals, if they do, might come over to Winnebago County, you know, for services for nursing homes. So it's a, you know, one of the things that we are monitoring and we are looking at from our perspective to see what direction Stevenson County is going, but it does not 100% have a correlation on what we're trying to do or the direction that we're trying to take, right? It's really strictly what Winnebago County's constraints are and finances are that obviously will ultimately have an impact on the citizens and the county as a whole, that decisions will need to be made on our perspective.
I have another question in the chat from the audience. If River Bluff would close, where would the residents go, and how might this impact other nursing home communities throughout Winnebago County? Jean, do you have a thought?
Sure. They would have to go to the private sector, and that would be their only choice. The real issue is how many of those private sector nursing homes accept Medicaid, and not all of them do.
Right.
They'll accept Medicare, but not all of them accept Medicaid. So those individuals will have a more difficult time because not all nursing homes accept that. Now, I believe there's enough beds out there and rooms out there to meet the need of our community, for sure. And as I said, we provide the same care as any facility in the county that we currently have today. There is a I was mentioning, it finally came to me, the 5-star rating. And I think I had a 4-star, which is poor, but with the change in management and different ways of doing things, that's come up. So I think they're either a 3 or a 2 now, which is excellent. So right now we're moving in the right direction, and I think that's important. And I think it's important that the voters know that.
Jaime.
Yeah, so just like any business that closes, they're gonna have to go to the private sector as well, find where there is Medicaid, Medicare, for those individuals that are River Bluff. Just like, we heard about Rockford Memorial closing its doors. Obviously, those clients are gonna have to go to the east side, whatever the case may be. Just similar situation. It's unfortunate, but that is something that we'll have also, those nurses and CNAs that are out there at the River Bluff nursing home, they would have to find another place. Obviously, we would work hard with them to find them employment elsewhere as part of the HR process from that perspective with recommendations. So there's a lot that goes with that when a business closes, or a River Bluff, in this case, River Bluff, that has to be taken into consideration. And what we do the best, obviously, the biggest thing is, make it viable, financially viable for the county, and making those decisions. But ultimately then, trying to provide the areas where those patients and those employees can find minimal ways to obviously find employment and find another facility out there for them.
I think now I'm getting a notice that we're getting close to the end of our time for today. I am going to give both of you time right now for just any closing thoughts, just a minute or two to, finalize anything that you would like to say to our audience today. And I will start with Jaime, and then I will move to Jean.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for your time. I think this has been an informative and educative lunch and learn. So I do appreciate the League of Women providing this. With closing thoughts, just want to be very cautious on this. This is an advisory question that's out there. It's not binding that we're going to act one way or the other. It does give us an idea what direction the citizens want to move in and what their thoughts are. So that's really critical for us because we represent the citizens as a whole. So I just want to be cautious on that. Second piece of it is that I do want to address that if we do increase the tax levy, it gets us to a level where we are able to finally get the River Bluff to a point on the 2.5 deficit that they've been spending yearly every year. So it gets us to that level potentially where we're at. So it's a balanced budget. I wouldn't say 100% it's a balance because obviously over the years we've been decreasing our reserves funds by $9 million. I just want to be clear though on that it does get us to that point where it gives us breathing room to strategize, to determine what direction, the payer mix, filling out the beds and stuff like that from that perspective. So it gets us to that point if it's a yes. If it's a no, it does not mean once again that we're going to close the doors and that's it, and throw the key out and that's it. It does not mean that, but it does give us that information, the feedback, what the consensus is within the citizens. And I just want to be clear that, this institution is out there. We're a non-for-profit. We're not for profit. I just want to make that distinction, just like the sheriff's department, just like the 911 center, just like the courts, all these different departments. It's citizens that pay for these services that obviously are not there for profit. It's a service that's being provided. So that's very critical. And one of them, I'm assuming the framers at that time when River Bluff was pointing this out and bringing River Bluff, it was to provide a service to those individuals, to have a nursing home that was tax subsidized for those individuals that otherwise couldn't afford a private institution, right? So, but that's from that perspective. But I just want to be clear that, this is a non-binding, it's advisory, it gives us feedback, and hopefully the county has to make the tough decisions on this, what direction it wants to move in. And, I think it's very critical information that we get that, and just go out and vote. And one last thing on that piece of it is just, you don't have to pick up a Democrat or Republican ballot. You can do a regular ballot just for that referendum question, that advisory a question, which is like just a nonpartisan ballot. You can pick it up and it'll have that question. So you don't have to pick a party line, whether Republican or Democrat. You can do a nonpartisan piece of it to vote on this particular issue.
Thank you, Jaime. Thank you. Jean.
Again, I want to thank you guys for having us. I agree with Jaime. It's been an excellent exercise. Remember that we are one of the few counties that have a nursing home. And the reason for that is it's very cost prohibitive to fund a nursing home. It takes a large portion of money just to cover wages, electrical, gas, you name it. It's, food, employees, health care, not only for the patients, but for all of the employees. It's a big number. And the reason why other counties have gotten out of the nursing home industry is because it is cost prohibitive. We have a strong employee retention problem. Our taxes never go down, they always go up. That's a real factor there. If it weren't for the ARP funds, I don't know what the county would be doing, because we do need to maintain a 25% reserve in the general fund. And we have come precariously close to not having that. So it's important that this decision is your decision. Again, it's advisory. It is not something that is hard and fast. We do want your input. And I also believe that it's an important enough decision for everyone to get out and vote. In the nursing home industry, the other thing we have, which I haven't brought up, is lawsuits, where someone gets hurt at the nursing home, they turn around and they sue us, and we have paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars in those suits to the public. So that's also a part of it. What we really want is your input. And with that, we can move this forward. If the community decides it does not want to have a tax increase, then we have to either look at how we're conducting business or eventually probably close River Bluff. So it's your decision and it's your vote, and we want to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean Crosby. Thank you, Jaime Salgado. Thank you for your time today. I can't think of anything better to do on a rainy Wednesday on my lunch hour, but to be with you two. And I also want to thank you for your service to our community. With that, in closing, please visit illinoisvoterguide.org for more information on who is running and other referendums placed on the primary ballot. This is run by the League of Women Voters, and it is nonpartisan. In closing, thank you for joining today's Lunch and Learn program. A big thank you again to our guests. I hope everyone found it valuable. Please encourage your family and friends to vote. And it is important, it's not only important to vote for individuals, it is also important to vote on referendums that impact our community. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Claire McIntyre for hosting the Zoom today, and for Angie Gorel for being with us also. And everyone have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.